Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Cheryl Durst, the Executive Vice President and CEO of IIDA, the International Interior Design Association. I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Mark Bryan, who is our Chief Research and Strategy Officer. And we're super excited to be here today to announce a couple things, say a couple things, reveal a couple
Yep.
things, and we're going to jump right in. Okay, Mark?
All right, let's do it.
Okay, let's start with, let me just ask you, what is IIDA Futures and how is it going to help solve some problems in our industry?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big things that we're here to talk about today. So, we've launched IIDA Futures, which is really meant to be the research and strategy platform for IIDA. So, taking a lot of what you and I have been working on over the past couple of years through our relationship, whether it's been at Industry Roundtable or developing the Certified Design Futures course, but really bringing it into a way that IIDA can now bring it to our entire industry. So, it's really meant to become a place for the entire built environment to really figure out what's changing in our industry and what to make meaning of that change as well too. Because let's be honest, we've got a lot on our plates right now. If you think about it, we've got all of the changes within our clients. We've got all of the changes that are happening in the environment and with AI and with well-being and just talent changes. There's just a lot happening right now.
Oh, definitely a lot coming at us, Mark. How do we even wrap our heads around the future, whether it's as designers or any other profession? Just how do we get in the right headspace to think about the future?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to challenge some of your cherished
Mm.
assumptions because we often think of the future as a fixed point. And what's actually true about it is that nobody can predict the future. I can't predict the future, even though I'm a futurist. Really, what we can do is we can take data and figure out what's happening today and then model out what could be possible. So it's really about being open to the plausible versus just saying, here is the future. Because once you try to say, here is the future, that's when you're going to get it wrong.
Right.
So it's more just about being open to the change and really starting to challenge yourself by asking your questions about what do we really know? What do we really need to study next? What do we truly want to answer? And what do we need to let go of at the same time?
And I think, Mark, and you touched on it, this is great clarification for our audience. This is not about predictability or predictions, correct?
Correct. No. Really, foresight in general is about exploring multiple ways that the future could unfold. It's not about saying this is the future, but it's about saying, given how the futures could evolve, which parts of those do we really want to enable? Which parts of those do we really want to maybe prevent? And using that to make better informed decisions. And that's really Foresight's unlock. And what IIDA Futures is meant to bring to the industry is just challenging us to ask ourselves, what are we prepared for and what are we not ready for? And what do we want to do about it? What capabilities do we want to build based off of those multiple futures that we're creating?
So a lot of words out there. Thinking about the future and being a futurist, you've used the word strategy and being strategic. We use the word forecast and foresight. And then also the T word, trends, right? We are all swimming in trend reports. Who doesn't love a good trend report? But we've got trends, we've got surveys, we've got data. How is IIDA Futures offering something a little different from what we already are swimming in, right? None of us want to indulge in information overload. So let's talk a little bit about how IIDA Futures would be different from all of that information we already have in front of us.
I think that's a very important question because I don't know about you all, but at the start of the year, I get the email bombardment of pick a number out of a hat, how many trends you should be paying attention to in this year. And there's nothing wrong with those. Trends are something that I use as part of the foresight methodology that we've built here at IIDA Futures. Market data is important. Surveys are important. Going out and having focus groups, design research are all important aspects. But the issue that I found is that we may get a trend report in our email and we may go, yeah, I agree with that. But what do I do about it?
Do with it, yeah.
Because just understanding the trends is one part of it. What IIDA Futures does next is then say, here's the so what behind that. And in a way that is about how to create strategy around maybe different business changes, like where's value starting to go for our clients? Or maybe it's about a strategy around what skills do I really want to develop based off of where these changes, where these trends are starting to point us to go towards. So it's really meant to help us to focus around what is changing, but not just stopping there, but moving it in the next direction. And what I would also say is that what we want to build are insights that can be used across the entire built environment industry. Obviously, we are IIDA, so we've got the designer part. But we also need to make sure that we are providing relevant insights for our facility teams, for our architects that are out there, for our developers, for our dealers, product manufacturers.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I really have been working on making sure that what we're going to be putting out there, yes, includes trends, but then also includes insights so that everybody, whether you're a senior designer or a junior designer or an educator or a researcher, can find insights that are meaningful for you and help you make better informed decisions.
Perfect. So let's be a bit revelatory and talk about the Futures Readiness Index.
Yeah.
It's a product and a service that we are really excited about at IIDA, and because it's an index, it is aggregating and collecting information, but it's also going to be measuring, correct? And so, who's it for? And what does the index mean? And what am I going to be ready for?
Well, this is kind of, along with IIDA Futures, the big reveal today, right? So yes, we are coming out with a new product. It is called, as Cheryl said, the Futures Readiness Index. And we named it that way because unlike a trend report where you may just read it once through and get the information, it's really being designed in a way that you can visit it multiple times throughout the year. You can come back to it depending on what type of insights you're really looking to gain. So the intention here is that you'll be able to understand what we're ready for and what we're not, and what capabilities we might need to develop in order to fill those gaps. So it's built around trends that then explores what that could mean for the future of our industry. And then we actually assess our industry as a whole based off of those futures. So we're saying, hey, if we are trying to provide more continuity, how ready are we to be able to provide continuity for ourselves as humans? And then looking at how we could build continuity. So it will really walk you through the entire arc of the foresight journey, where you start with the data and the evidence, then going into understanding what conditions those are creating, what scenarios of the future that could bring, and then what actions we need to take from it. And so what's exciting about it is that we are launching it right after Chicago Design Week.
In a couple of weeks.
In a couple of weeks, yes. And the intention there is because we want to be able to also capture any innovations that are coming out during that really important week as well. But the good news is that if you're a member of IIDA, you're going to get a free version. So be on the lookout for emails, as well as some QR codes that are going to be floating in and around that you can be able to sign up to be able to know when it's going to be launched.
And the Readiness Index, I can assess myself as an organization and benchmark year after year. So it's almost like a health assessment, right? I can look at the general health and readiness and preparedness and resilience of my organization, so I can benchmark against myself, but I can also benchmark against the industry in its entirety.
The industry in its entirety, absolutely, yes. That was one of the key things that we wanted to make sure, is that you understood where you stood.
Yeah.
You know, we wanted to make sure that it was approachable from many different levels, but also approachable so that you could see yourself in the data and the results as well, too. And so that, yes, you'll be able to see where are you in terms of skills, where are you in terms of workflows, where are you in terms of governance and the tools that we have. So that way you can then decide, what do you want to do? Do you want to focus on the new tools that you might be able to build? Or is the skill sets really what we need to develop? And that's why, again, it can be of value to a senior leader, as well as to our educators who are trying to figure out, what course do I need to develop next?
Are there some specific gaps right now that you could talk about and share with our audience? Where do you see some readiness gaps that we can, using the word ready again,
there you go, we're ready
we
for
can
it.
readily identify our readiness gaps?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that our industry is not short on creativity or intelligence. And that's the good news, right? I think a lot of people are fearful of new technologies maybe eating some of our creativity or making us feel maybe a little less smart. And the good news is that's not the gap that I'm seeing, really.
Right.
The gap that I'm seeing, it goes along with the continuity piece that I talked about. Our continuity of human lives is being disrupted almost on a daily basis. It comes from different things. It comes from our attention being disrupted because of technology and focus. It comes from climate change disrupting where we can live and what that kind of safety and resilience looks like, as well as then just how we are moving in and out of our day as we're starting to live longer as humans. And so there's a gap in really diagnosing and being prepared for the continuity of what's coming next. I would also say we are seeing some gaps in the proof performance that we might need for our industry because clients, end users are asking for more data, more proof about the outcomes that we are trying to guarantee and say as we're talking about it in our design presentations or our briefs and our responses to the RFPs. And that gap of proof is going to perhaps be something that could nip us in the bud in the long run.
Yeah.
I would also say that judgment is a gap area. And I don't mean that in that we have poor judgment.
Right.
What I mean is that we have a gap in the visibility of judgment. So a lot of times the decisions that are made happens behind closed doors, even when we have like a co-creation session or something along those lines. But what we are going to be starting to ask to do is to record our judgments in a visible way because of all of the prompts, because of all the iterations, because of all of the output that's being put out there right now.
I would also think, Mark, general perceptions around place. The meaning of work has changed. We know that work will continue to happen, but how we define workplace has shifted and changed. The transactional nature of retail has changed. Healthcare has changed. So all of the vertical markets, disciplines that we live in as design, the cultural and sociological components about how people think of those places has become so blurred.
Agreed. And I think one of the other gaps that I'm seeing is the
Even
where
home.
even
Sorry,
home.
and
Well, I
I
was just gonna
wanted
say,
to make sure I put that in as well. And so
yeah,
not just from a commercial sense, but even what home looks like and feels like has so morphed and changed and expanded.
that's literally what I was just going to say is that one of the gaps is that some of where our most consequential work is moving is in the home. And so I think that there's a gap in planning for what that looks like and taking on the institutional responsibility of care in the home, of learning in the home, of being able to live across generations in the home, building community in the home. All of those things are landing in the home.
Yeah.
And we are residential designers, our commercial designers who do multifamily are doing a great job of creating these welcoming, inviting homes, but there's a lot more that's going to be asked of it in the next 10 years.
And I was just thinking about the term aging in place. Well, we're also learning in place and healing in place and creating in place. And so what this report is going to be able to tell us, not just about place, but about people as well, will be fascinating.
Very much so. Yeah. So the report itself was actually built off of over 1,000 data points, and it covered multiple different macro systems of what's causing change in the world. And what was really interesting to me is that the behaviors that we're starting to see of how people act and what they do and where they do it is starting to change as well. And that's looking at across all the different sectors too. So the report itself is going to talk about, yes, what are these big trends and changes and things like that, but it's also going to talk about how healthcare is changing, how the sectors are changing. So it's really sector agnostic, even though it will touch on workplace and one of my favorite trends, the two-speed workforce that we could see in the next 10 years.
Perfect. So thinking about, let's lean a little bit into the foresight capacity. So if there's a principal or a firm leader or an operations officer who wants to start building their organization's capacity around foresight, how do they start? Where do they begin?
It's a great question. Well, I would say you could reach out to me or to anybody at IIDA so we can help talk about it a little bit. We've obviously built our Certified Design Futurist course, which is one of our flagship products that we now run through IIDA Futures as well. And what that course allows you to do is to learn the lexicon, to learn the frameworks, the tools, the process of being able to integrate foresight into our work, and not in a way that's going to bloat our process, but just augment what we already do. So one part of it is gathering data. We'll teach you how to gather data and what to do with that data. We already do design research as part of most of our projects, even if you're creating a product or even a process or an experience. This just talks about maybe going to some different unfamiliar places. So I would obviously advocate for people to go to Certified Design Futurist and maybe take that course. What I would also say is that this is where you need to decide what question you're truly trying to answer. What is it about your companies, your values that you would like to change? And where do you want to see the future differentiate it, because I think a lot of companies right now are trying to say that their process is the differentiator. And I think that there's other forms of value that it could be had out there. So part of it comes down to a value conversation about what is it that I really want to tackle first, because we can't tackle everything.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would just be spinning our wheels.
And for design firms, and I would think for sales organizations as well, foresight is really scope expanding, right? And so talk a little bit about how if we're thinking about a traditional scope of services, can foresight be reliably introduced into a scope of services at a firm?
Absolutely. I mean, again, it's kind of what I love about foresight. And when I worked as a designer, I realized that we were already creating the future. And then I was trained in foresight and realized this is what we do, but just in a different manner. And so, what you're able to do with foresight is to expand the conversations that you're able to have with clients. You're able to expand and move up closer to where value is created, up closer to where the decisions are made, because really what it allows you to do is to become that trusted advisor that we already are, just in a new fashion. And so, you're able to then add on new engagements that clients would be willing to pay for, especially the clients that really want to push innovation, right? Foresight may not be for everybody. It may not be for just the project that you're working on. It may just be about a space or a new type of product that you're trying to launch. But what I would say Foresight's best possible use case should be is to figure out how we can augment that overall project process as a whole. But that's where I think having the clients who are becoming smarter and want to have their fingers more into our work would see it as a value add to be able to really co-create the future experience together and pay for that as well.
Well, and it's absolutely expanding the competency and wherewithal for interior designers as a profession.
Very much so.
And so my next question for you, as a membership organization, there's so much that we do. We're in the business of belonging. But why is this an apt and appropriate pursuit for IIDA?
Well, I mean, I said this at the beginning, IADA's mandate is really, or at least I think I said it, is really about the evolving and expanding and augmenting the industry and making sure that our industry is heading together in a coherent direction. And so IADA is known as a convener to bring people together. We are a connector, whether it's about careers or for help or things like that, as well as education and the skill sets that we're developing. And so for IIDA, foresight and IIDA Futures is really built into the DNA of who IIDA is, because IIDA has always been about what's next and how can we help. And I think that's really what IIDA Futures is centered around.
Right. And design lives in what's next, right?
Correct.
It has a foot firmly in now, but design lives in what's next. I think often clients aren't often aware of that, but designers are always creating for the future and for the what's next up there for their clients.
Designers are natural futurists because we build things that don't exist today, and we understand the human behaviors that are going to change. This is just giving you new tools, new frameworks, new abilities to be able to create what's next and maybe lift our eyes up off the page just a little bit. I think sometimes we're so heads down on what's right in front of us today that we miss the avenue ahead that could really lead us into what's possible next and really change the value proposition of our industry.
Yeah. So how can our members and our sponsors, kind of everybody within the IIDA ecosystem, how can they engage with IIDA Futures?
So the good news is that we're going to be creating some more offerings. So we've talked about reports. We're going to be offering custom reports, custom workshops. Hopefully, we're going to be working with chapters to provide new foresight engagements that they can bring themselves or even their clients to co-create intelligence around certain topics, certain questions. We're also going to be doing briefings. So similar to this, where maybe it's like a webinar where we're going to cover a topic. We're also going to be trying to convene leaders around the business of design, where the business of design is going. So there's going to be a lot of offerings and ways that we engage. We actually just launched the IIDA Futures website, where we list a lot of these engagements and talk about what they can do for everybody. So go check out the IIDA Futures website. And then if you have questions, reach out to me, because the good news is that all of this is customized. It's meant so that we can engage in multiple different levels depending on where you are in your life and in your working career.
And then a gratuitous plug for CDF.
Yeah. I mean, so I think we all at IIDA have been very proud about what the Certified Design Futures course has been able to enable for those that have gone through it. So I'm very proud to say that as of Chicago Design Week, we will have had over 72 participants go through the course. And each participant to a person has said that it has helped them to think differently. It's helped them to be able to expand what they might be able to offer and think through the services or the products that they might need to be offered. So what I would say is that if you're wrestling with understanding what your future could look like and what your differentiator is, check out the course, because I think what you'll find is it will be able to provide you an answer, because part of the course is also building a future around a topic or a question that you have burning in your head that you need to answer. It could be the future of what is the workplace, or it could be the future of like, what new value could I create for my end user in a healthcare system?
Perfect. We're going to do some audience Q&A in just a bit, but Mark, if you could just quickly summarize IIDA Futures, the value, and why we should engage.
Okay. So IIDA Futures is really about helping to build what's next. It's about asking in a coherent manner, what are we ready for? What are we not? And then IIDA Futures is meant to help stimulate and build the capabilities that will prolong the value of design and move design into what's possible next. And so I think the engagement part is really, what do you want to talk about? What do you want to do? What do you want to build as our next differentiator?
Perfect. And we've got some good audience questions coming in.
Great.
And I love this question. What's the difference between IIDA Futures and other approaches to foresight?
Very good question.
I wish we could claim market dominance right now, and it's only the IIDA approach, but we certainly know that there are multiple entities out there that are talking about foresight and the future. So what are some differences? How are we different from other folks in the marketplace?
Very good question, because foresight can be used in different manners. However, everybody practices foresight slightly different. There are different frameworks, there are different focuses. Some practice it for consulting, for corporate strategy. Some practice it for maybe a little bit more speculative work. What we've built through IIDA Futures is a new type of methodology that's really built on the experience of being in the design industry and how designers work across, whether you're in the construction practice or whether you are in sales or whether you are just a designer or a leader. So it's really built around that process of knowing that we move from stage to stage to stage and how to infill foresight in those each stages in a way that will add value and increase relevance of what comes out of that process.
And then based on what we're learning and through futures, one of the questions is, how can we be sure that the choices we're making are correct?
Well, I think if your intention is getting it right, you might be a little disappointed here. What you're trying to do is to figure out what is plausible across multiple futures. And really, the reason that we use multiple futures is so that you examine what comes out of it. No matter which way the future goes, you're prepared for it. So with AI, if AI commoditizes parts of our work, we can be prepared for which parts are commoditized. And then we can make the decisions around which ones we want to protect and which ones we don't. So it's really about preparation for multiple different ways it could go, and then using that to connect those tiny red threads, and then using that to create strategy versus trying to say, this is the future that we're creating.
Here's an immediate and a now question. What do you think design firms should be thinking about changing right now?
I would say the thing that I would be thinking about changing right now would be really thinking about how we're documenting, going back to that judgment visibility part of it. Because I think we all know that clients and end users are getting smarter, and they're going to want to see the why behind the decisions that were made. And I think sometimes we assume that that lives in our specifications or in our drawings, and that's where people can go to get the answers, or just even in the design presentation and the design brief. And I think what they're asking for is a little bit more of a behind the scenes look right now, especially as we are starting to use new tools that will allow us to iterate faster. So I think just thinking about where are the judgment points along the design process, that can and should become visible and that can and should become participatory.
Another audience question. If I take the CDF course, will I come out ready to practice as a futurist?
So what you'll come out ready to do is to understand how foresight works and how it works in our process. Part of the course, though, is teaching you how you can then integrate it into your company, to your firm, to your organization. So you'll be ready to practice, but there's still work to be done after that. And that's what we teach you in our last module, excuse me, where it's about what are the challenges that you're going to face? What are the conversations that you're going to need to have? How can you make sure that people understand what foresight is versus what just general design is? Because we're still having that conversation. So you will be ready and prepared, but you still have to figure out how to employ it within your own company, because that's what we're not going to do.
Yeah.
We're not going to sit here and tell you, here's what you must do, agnostic of how a company functions, because that would mean that it would not work.
But your approach is a very real world approach because the project, you're using an existing client or scenario within your company if you're not at a firm, so within a product manufacturer or a dealer. And so you're working with an existing set of conditions for a client.
Correct. Yes. What we encourage people to do is to pick a topic that they want to focus on that will have real world implications. So that way they have a case study that they can then go and present to their leadership, that they can go present to a client who may be interested in this, that maybe can be used as part of your RFP or selling process as well. Because then you'll be able to see how it would work within the decisions that have to be made across that project for your company.
And what are some resources that you use to gather data that fuels your foresight practice, and kind of tied to that, what sorts of data do you draw from?
Oh my gosh. My email and inbox is so full from all of the different things, but really where I draw a lot of inspiration from and a lot of data from, I go and look at patent filings, which are a very nebulous thing to dive into, but it's something that you can see what's coming, what's moving. And then I look at what startups are coming into the market. I look at all of the trade journals that are out there do a really good job about publishing white papers that are put out there. I go to universities to see what are the both published and unpublished white papers that are out there. So the data that I'm looking for is expansive, and we've got different macro systems that we look into, everything from the environment to education to demographics to culture and behavior. And so it's really about finding trusted sources that are going to provide you data, not just news, but actual data that we can use and replicate. It just depends on the topic, because if we're focusing on a topic that's maybe in Europe, there may be data sources there that I'd focus on first.
And what about signals? Someone is saying, I hear the term signals quite a bit related to foresight. So can you talk a little bit about signals?
Signals are data is really what it is. Signals are really just what's telling us what's changing today. So we call them signals of change because they're an indication that something is moving. And that's really the bread and butter that builds the foundation of all of our work, is that signal data that we use to then extrapolate meaning for the rest of the work.
Do you spend your day collecting signals?
I wish that I could, because it's one of my favorite things to do. What I do is usually in the morning, I see what has been new, what has been published, and collect that. The report that we are launching here, the Futures Readiness Index, I spent about 2 months doing signal collection, looking at all those different macro sources and systems to be able to find what is going to be truly changing and moving within our industry.
So this question is around who is this designed for? And we touched on this a little bit. It's not just for designers, but can you talk a little bit about where you see its relevance for things like commercial real estate?
Yeah, I mean, for commercial real estate as in general, I would think about this in terms of it will help you to understand what new types of assets you would need to be able to be creating for the users and the communities and the tenants of the future. So it is meant for anybody who touches the built environment, though. We've had sales teams go through, we've had facilities managers, we've had educators. We're getting ready to have our first experiential and graphic designer go through it. So anybody who really is part of the built environment, it is for you. And it was intentionally made that way as well.
Yeah. Anybody whose destiny is place.
Correct.
Is there, and this is about magnitude, is there any particular size of business or studio or company that Futures is geared toward? I'm a firm of 5. Would this be relevant for me?
Very much. I think very
I'm
much so. Yeah, very, very much so. It is meant for any firm size. What you will do is your practice just may look different. You may need to engage the entire team so that everybody can help with the work. If you're a larger firm and have the resources, you may have a very specific team or maybe a couple individuals that would make sense to be able to start to bring it in. But it is for all firm sizes, especially I think the smaller ones are the ones that have more scrappiness to them, the more ability to be flexible, the more ability to ingrain this into their
Yeah,
practice.
yeah. Well, we're at time, my
Oh,
friend. Thank you all so much for joining us for just this taste of IIDA Futures, the reveal. And find us on iida.org
hmm
and learn more. Stay tuned. We're going to do more of these with Mark to talk about now and next. And it's all about expanding our competency and firm footing for the profession of interior design and the future.
agreed. Thank you very much. Thanks, Cheryl.
Thanks all. Take care, everybody. See you soon.
Good.